Alright boys and girls, the purpose of this video is to touch on the ground and aerial combos for the insect glaive, the damage per second between the two over time, both in elemental and raw damage numbers. If you don't feel like watching the video, the short and skinny of it is that ground combos, both for elemental and raw damage, seems to do about 20% more damage than the air combos do. Now, do keep in mind that for this video, I used the triple buff effect as the timer and continued to attack with the same string of combos, both in the ground and aerial format, until the combo wore out. Also, my build is pretty basic. I just have a few attack ups, some critical ups, and I do have Airborne equipped, which does increase the aerial combo damage by 30%. So keep that in mind when looking at these numbers. Aerial is buffed by 30%. Now, I touched on this in another video, but on the off chance you haven't seen it and you're not aware, the Airborne skill actually does increase the raw damage of both combos in their entirety and the first strike of downward thrust. Not just the last hit of a specific combo or something like that. All of your aerial combo attacks damages have been increased by 30%, at least as far as the raw damage is concerned. There is an elemental airborne, which increases the elemental damage by 30% while airborne, but that's limited to a specific high rank set. And I'm not really going to touch on that too much, but if you really want to squeeze out as much airborne damage as you possibly can, that is a possibility. Alright, so against a stationary target, ground combos deal about 20% more damage than air combos over the lifetime of the Kinsex triple buff. What about elemental? Does that make a big difference? Now, if you check the Reddit, check information, generally they say that the aerial is better for elemental. So I decided to check this out with an elemental as well. I didn't change my build at all. So this could vary a lot depending on if you build for elemental, but all I did to test this out was I simply changed my weapon from a paralysis glaive to a water element glaive. It's got 400 water element on it. That's the only change that I made to the entire thing. And through testing, I found that it does much more damage overall, at least against the wagon here, than my raw only build with the paralysis. But I wasn't very impressed with the damage difference between the grounded and the aerial combos, and you'll see what I mean in just a minute here. Now, this surprised me. I absolutely expected the aerial elemental damage to close the gap versus the ground combo a little bit because of my understanding of elemental damage. But that wasn't the case. The aerial elemental damage actually performed worse versus ground combos than the raw aerial damage did versus the raw ground combos. And I'm not 100% sure on exactly why that is. My understanding of elemental damage was that it's a flat increase to your damage number, dependent upon the monster's weakness and it regardless of your motion values. So more hits equals more damage with it. Like element has a bigger impact on dual blades than it would on great swords, for example. But apparently that's not the case, or maybe I just had some really bad luck with crits. I don't know. I'm not about to go back and count all the crits. If you want to do that and post it in the comments, you go for it. I'm not going to do that. But yeah, no matter how you play, roughly you're going to see about the same DPS difference between ground and air combos. You're looking at a 20% loss in damage over time for increased mobility and general safety with the aerial combos. Now, the reason I posted this video, the reason I made it in the first place, is because there's not really much information available online about how much more damage ground combos do. Most people just say ground combos do more, doesn't matter how much more. As far as many people are concerned, if it's 1% better, it's infinitely better. Um, I don't subscribe to that sort of mindset, so I wanted to find out exactly how much better it is, and it seems like about 20% is a pretty safe answer. Your build may change this a little bit. Maybe it's because I didn't build into element. If I built more heavily into element, maybe that would make a bigger difference. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to make enough difference that I'm going to be willing to build around that. Um, but that's something to consider as well. I really like the aerial playstyle because I use the status elements, paralysis, as you can see in the video, and I also like to pretend I'm a cowboy and rodeo the suckers left and right. So that's why I typically go for these builds. But yeah, don't stress too much about, oh, I have to stay on the ground or I'm not going to do any damage. That's not the case. They're not that far apart in damage. I mean, 20% is a pretty significant increase in damage if you maintain the ground, but you also have to stay on the target 100% of the time, and that's where the aerial combos really excels. Is that it doesn't matter where the monster goes, how it's bouncing around. Like Tigrex, for example, I don't care who you are, you're going to be spending half your time fighting Tigrex in the air because he's constantly moving around, and you just can't keep up with him otherwise. There are always going to be situations where one's going to be better than the other, and just keep that in mind whenever you're playing. So I hope this information was helpful. I hope it helped you make a decision on how you may want to approach the playstyle and what sort of builds you may want to make. And also, hopefully, if you're watching this not as an insect glaive, but just as another player, and you see this, maybe you won't be too hard on that one guy who does not leave the air through the entire fight, because really, he's not doing that bad. Yep, enjoy the rest of the video, guys. That's all I have to say now.